how should we regulate homeschooling? I'll tell you. I'll tell you how. We shouldn't. Okay, well, we'll actually do a video about this. Stick around. So the question is, how should we regulate homeschooling? Look, I'm in our homeschooling room. So this article came out it was an article and interview. It was an interview, really, with a substantial blurb for 1A, which is a program for an NPR affiliate radio station. And I saw it pop up all over my social media feeds, both through the affiliate, through 1A, and through NPR. And, you know, when you share things online, you get this banner picture, right? This photograph. And the photo is a stock photo of a yellow school bus, but the camera is right next to the stop sign that folds out from the school bus. So the big picture you see, like if you're scrolling up your Facebook feed, you see a school bus that says, "Stop!" And then the headline. And the headline is, how should we regulate homeschooling? This video is not going to be about the content of the story, of the round table. It's going to be about framing and about the conversations that it is profitable for us to get into. So I want to talk about how things were framed and who controls the rhetoric, who controls that battle. So 3 people came onto the program, and their Twitter profiles were shared with us. I'd actually seen the 2 women who came on pop up before, and I'll talk about that briefly. The first person, Jerusha, her Twitter handle is @ICT_pinup. Okay, so pinup is in her name. And this is her profile description. Provocative feminist, passionate writer, fierce survivor, celebrating women's sexuality and equality, motherhood always by choice, working on my first novel. Okay, so this woman, admirably, is a fierce survivor. But she's definitely laying some other things out there, including motherhood always by choice. So she is for the assassination of infants. That was one. The second person is Samantha Field, @Samantha P. Field. And her profile description is, the fundamentalists were right. Book learning gave me all sorts of ideas. Feminist, bi, agnostic, theist, Christian, humanist. Let me try that again. Feminist, bi, agnostic, theist, Christian, humanist. Bitter. So the last word in her profile description is that she is bitter. She is bisexual, so she denies Christian sexuality. What's more is she claims to be a Christian. Like, forget the sexuality thing. She's not even sure she believes in God. And yet, she says she's a Christian. Now, I've seen both of these people pop up. I've seen Samantha pop up even more, the woman who describes herself as bitter. And bitter is the word, because I've seen them pop up not only doing stuff against homeschooling, but really anything that they view as Christian fundamentalist. Now, all of those descriptors that they lay out in their own profiles don't disqualify them from talking about homeschooling. But let's understand where they're coming from. Of course, they, like anybody else, have an agenda. And they have a history of working against the Orthodox Christian faith. for whatever reasons. I've been around enough, well, how should I put it, of the wrong kind of fundamentalism to believe that their bitterness might not be baseless. But I can say that their bitterness, especially when you see the other fruit, but this bitterness, this root of bitterness, is not something that's Christ-like, and it's not becoming of a Christ follower. And the issue is not that they are bitter, but that this is not a sin that they are trying to mortify. Instead, it's something they embrace and use as a weapon. So that's important as we note how this thing is framed. The third person was the token. The third person was the good Dr. Brian D. Ray of the National Home Education Research Institute. Now, that sounds really important, the National Home Education Research Institute. And I have been told by an acquaintance that they do important work. But you notice they didn't have anyone over from any of the big guns, like say HSLDA. The person they invited, so the National Home Education Research Institute has been around since 1990. They have 300 followers on Twitter. Now, maybe a think tank isn't going to put a lot of effort into their Twitter account, but that kind of gives you an idea of their importance in the cultural landscape. Now, none of these people are nationally recognized names, but notice that as this radio station, as the story is being put together, there's no effort to go seek a luminary from the other side, and there is another side, right? How do we know there's another side? Because the headline itself just oozes agenda. How should we regulate homeschooling? Now, in the blurb preceding the talk, right at the end, is a paragraph of two questions. How should homeschooling be regulated? And should it be regulated at all? So that's the token recognition that some people have another opinion. But there's definitely a direction being pursued in this. You are supposed to read the headline and see that picture of the bus with a stop sign and probably not click. Honestly, that's how media is these days. So all that it does is it confirms in the mind of those who think homeschoolers are dangerous that there are many who agree with them. And that's it. That's all you need. You've had the effect that you want. As I said, I'm not going to talk about the content. I want to talk about the framing, and then I want to talk about choosing your battles. So, you have two women who are very openly against Christianity, but for some sort of state education, of home education. But they hate God and they hate the Bible. And so they hate the normal rationale that Christians lay out for homeschooling, right? There's nothing that stops them from saying the state is God. Not only that, but they think that we are dangerous. We should not get into such conversations. I really think that Dr. Ray made a mistake. And so often, we say that we just want to get the light out there. We want to preach the gospel. We want to share the truth. If we just let people talk amongst themselves in an echo chamber, that's going to drive them further into fanaticism. They need to see the other side. But the way things are today, people are so polarized, so divided. It's already battle. It's already war. It's been joined. All you're doing is exposing yourself to ambush. People are already in their echo chambers. All you do is become a scapegoat for the other side. You're not going to actually be able to have a conversation and to represent well, right? if there's an agenda and there's enough force behind it, that's the message that's going to be delivered, and you're just going to end up serving it. This is what happens to Christians in so many other arenas as well, right? They get invited to some public event where they're the only Christian, and this tokenicity ought to be a huge warning. There's already an agenda in place, and all that person's presence serves to do is to whip up the scapegoatism, right? So look, here is a person who thinks in that way that we hate, who is one of those people we hate. Hear how evil and wicked he is. Get into a frenzy of righteous anger with me. This headline, how should we regulate homeschooling? First of all, there's the word should, right? This is something we should do. It's already a given. We're going to regulate homeschooling. Right? So it already eliminates part of the conversation. Forget that token question buried in the little blurb. It's about the headline. How should we? We should. And by what means? And then, of course, there's the we. And this is what I'm talking about, what battles you choose and where you go with your fight. If you wander by yourself into the middle of the enemy's keep, you're going to get in trouble. And that's the we. Reasonable people will all agree with us, with this position. We are the we. It's actually very exclusionary language. It makes me think of the comic strip that I saw online recently, in which a many-headed gray mass is off in a corner of the comic box. And there are three little colorful people coming up, and they say, "We don't have any room for you in here." So the three little colored faces say, "Okay, we'll just start our own thing." And there's a little box around them. And then the many-headed gray mass says, "Hey, why are you excluding us?" "Oh no!" And all the little gray heads slam into the small little box where the three little colored faces are. That is exactly what has been happening, for example, with the church. The solution is actually not to engage in that fight of trying to convince non-Christian homeschoolers about regulation. It's to have a very robust Christian homeschooling community. Those who homeschool for matters of principle, not convenience. Now, Christians are not the only ones who homeschool for matters of principle. But you'll find that the people who are calling for regulation are the ones who do it for matters of convenience or personal choice, not matters of principle. My son has a learning disability, and I can do a better job in school. This is not about who can do a better job in educating. Christian homeschoolers believe that the right thing to do is to not to have the government educate their children. So that identity needs to be strong. And where there's fighting, it needs to be done with a front. Okay? So, like HSLDA is one of those fronts. Political lobbying is another front. Like regulation is a real threat. But discourse amongst homeschoolers of various stripes is not the answer. Discourse with people who are interested in education is not the answer. What the answer is a robust Christian homeschooling culture and engagement on broad fronts. Lobby. That's great. The reason discourse is not the answer is that phase is gone. People have their agendas. People have their causes of war, and they have their battle plans. That's already set. The time for negotiation is past. The time maybe to be a little more radical. It has not done the Christian church a bit of good to negotiate with the bishops and brothers who are feminist, bi, agnostic, theist, Christian humanists. And it will not do the Christian homeschooling community a bit of good to negotiate with the feminist, bi, agnostic, theist, Christian humanists, bitter as well. The fight is on. So, get out there, know why you're homeschooling, homeschool well, participate in efforts to build up that community and participate in efforts to protect that community. But the conversations, the dialogue, be aware that except for some one-on-one things, anything that is public is a trap because we're already past that phase. If you're being invited to do that, you're being invited into a trap. I'm going to stop saying the word trap and I'm going to be done. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I was homeschooled myself when I was a kid. I homeschool my kids now. I feel very strongly about all this, as you can tell. Down with regulation. What is that? And I'm glad to have always lived in states where I don't have to do anything. And I'm going to fight to keep it that way. All right, y'all. The peace of Christ be upon you.